one drawer of type has hundreds of little pieces.
Welcome to the Saginaw Art Museum podcast. The COVID-19 pandemic is altering the usual routines of people around the globe and around the block. As practices of social distancing and self-quarantine are implemented, artists are finding new ways to adapt to the changing landscape. In this series, Art at Home, we have conversation with artists and creative-minded individuals to understand the way these unusual times are impacting lives. Detroit has been labeled a hotspot during the COVID-19 pandemic. In this episode of Art at Home, we check in with the director of Signal Return, Lynne Avadenka. Signal Return is not only a print shop, but an art education center in the heart of the city near Eastern Market. In our conversation today, Lynne describes the adjustments the organization is making and hopes for reemergence. This interview was recorded April 17th, 2020. Well, thank you again, Lynne, for coming on the podcast here. Signal Return is a print shop in Detroit there. Why don't you describe a little bit of what Signal Return is about?
Sure. We are a traditional letterpress print shop and actually sort of a print education center and a community art center. We were founded in 2011, and I came on board in 2013 as the director. So we are dedicated to preserving the art and craft of letterpress printing, but also using that as a sort of starting off point for all kinds of connected and collaborative programming that goes with that. We have a robust education program. We teach workshops so that people can come in and use our equipment. We have a program that allows for artists and graphic designers who know what they're doing to come in and work independently and use our equipment. We also have a shop where we sell the work of artists who work in print media. So we're a community art center on I guess a couple different levels. So working artists, people who are curious and who want to come into the shop and learn about the history of typography directly, working with their hands as opposed to on a computer, at a remove. So that's where we're living right now. The other thing we try and do is make the connection between the written word, the printed word, and the spoken word. So we have book readings and book launches in the space with writers. And we've been collaborating, this would have been our seventh season, with an organization called Literary Detroit to present a program called Motor Signal, which is Detroit poets, nonfiction and fiction writers, journalists in our space, reading from their work and engaging the audience in some kind of co-creation during the evening of that reading. And then Signal Return produces letterpress printed broadsides of the writer's work. So that's just one example of the way that we are open to the community. In our print shop, we organize our own workshops with some of our staff serving as instructors and then also inviting guest instructors from out of state to bring a skill or a way of working that they can share with our Detroit artists. And I think I just lost my train of thought, but that gives you an overview of what we do.
Yeah, it sounds like a very active community that you have between sort of more well-established artists and also those that may just be getting curious about getting some ink on their hands.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the way that our current circumstances have altered the way that Signal Return is working. Letterpress, typography, the work that you're doing is a very hands-on, very present kind of work. And now that has changed in terms of some of the restrictions that we have in the state of Michigan here. So tell me a little bit more about the story of how things have changed and how you're adjusting to that.
Well, we closed to the public March 17th. At this point, unfortunately, it doesn't seem safe. So we have canceled or postponed some of the in-house workshops that we had planned for the spring season. The most difficult, I guess, for us and the most disappointing is that we had been planning this whole past year to present a festival to take place at the end of April called Power of the Press Fest. And that would have included about 100 artists, starting with a national curated exhibition that my colleague at Signal Return, Lee Marshalonis, and I put together that was going to open at the Scarab Club. So that was going to happen on a Friday night of this weekend. Not this weekend, but the weekend of the festival, which would have been April 24th. And then on the 25th, we had scheduled a number of different printmaking classes that were going to take place in our print shop as well as in other print shops in the city, and also a special tour at the Detroit Institute of Arts of a print exhibition that's up now. And then Sunday we had we were going to take over Shed 5 of Eastern Market and had 65 committed artist vendors who were coming to town to sell their print works. So that all had to be postponed. We have a date for next year, for next spring, with all hopes that we'll be able to present that and share that with the public. So that is certainly on hold. All of the things that we do when the space is open, host university classes that come to take workshops, school groups that come to visit, free tours that we do, all that is on hold. We also, as I mentioned, have a store. We definitely benefit from the walk-in traffic of the Eastern Market, which is where we're located. And since we're closed, we're missing that bonus to our revenue stream, frankly. We have a pretty great online store. And so we are letting people know that it's open for sale of, for the purchase of works by, I think we have over 40 artists that we, whose work we're representing. And we're just telling people honestly that until it's safe for us to be out and about, because while we feel art is essential, we're definitely respecting what the governor said and staying out of the way of other more pressing needs. So we'll be delivering what people have purchased when it's safe for us and permitted for us to be open.
I mean, it sounds like a very similar story that I'm hearing from a lot of arts organizations. I'm a little curious with the type and some of the equipment that you have. Is there a level of precaution sort of beyond what would be normal for you to either clean those materials, or are there limitations in your ability to clean materials as we're able to prepare in the future to reopen? Is that something that is of any concern?
Well, we've just, between my coworkers and I at Signal Return, we're just starting to talk a little bit back and forth about what it might mean for us to open. And I think the kind of programming that I discussed with you is going to be further down the road than we might like. We're talking about maybe we're a pretty lean and mean little team. There's really only four of us that are running the show, with wonderful part-time help as well. But we're talking about maybe the four of us returning and having a chance to actually create some new work for sale in the studio before we even think about opening up the doors and letting people back in. Because as you mentioned, everybody's touching everything. So there's, a one drawer of type has hundreds of little pieces. So there's really, I think, probably no safe way to sterilize or, take care of that kind of cleaning that has been going on with doorknobs and all that kind of stuff. That's just, I don't think we can't do that.
Yeah. The scope of that project is larger than other organizations, perhaps.
Yeah, there's literally a lot of moving parts. There's press handles, there's all parts of the presses that are hands-on, and you're handling paper. And when we teach workshops, we have 8 people in a workshop, but we have 4 printing presses. So it's not as if we can say to that person, you just stay on press number 1 and do your work. It is, as I explained it's a communal space. So whatever normal might be, it's going to take a while to see what that might be, and then actually implement it.
Yeah, it's quite a puzzle.
Yes.
I'm a little bit curious to learn how you're able to maintain a sense of community for the artists that normally would be coming into the shop there. Is that something that you've been able to continue in terms of the communication with those artists? Have you moved to more online kinds of ways to reach out to them? Tell me a little bit more about sort of that community aspect of the work that you're doing.
The community aspect, I think, is at this point online. We have a newsletter that we send out every month, which we've been doing, for years now, and we have a pretty. We have about 5,400 people on the mailing list. So we've been keeping all of our supporters who are artists and also just people who care about what we do. We've been keeping them informed through the newsletter, on Facebook, and also on Instagram. We've been keeping them apprised of our lack of progress, our interest in keeping the organization alive, and through Instagram, which is much more visual, sharing some past projects. Joel Grothaus, who is our studio manager, is in charge of the Instagram account. And so he's got lots of wonderful in-progress shots of artists working in the shop, and is really keeping up that way and keeping people, informed and hopefully inspired by what happens in the shop so that they'll be ready to come back. The online store is run by Dania Ensing, who is another one of the team, and she's done a great job of getting mostly everything that we have that's available up in a way that makes it easy for people to see what's been happening in the shop. There's a wonderful, this is, I think, our second iteration of a project that we started called On Press Prints for Nonprofit. And we've gotten wonderful foundation support to invite Detroit artists into our shop, artists who have not been making prints as part of their practice, but inviting them in to make prints that then are sold to benefit a nonprofit that they select. There are some absolutely beautiful prints that these artists have made that are on sale in the shop, and the foundations and the grants that we wrote allow for the artists that have participated to get a really nice honorarium for their work. And then when we sell the prints, we're giving half back to the nonprofit. And they're all nonprofit service organizations in the city of Detroit. Some are pretty well known, some are under the radar. But if people buy those prints now, it's a great way to support Signal Return as well as those nonprofits that are doing the good work. We're doing the best we can, in this virtual world, but we actually live in the physical world of the print shop.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds as though you're working on continuing to tell the story of the print shop in some unique and creative ways, and try and translate the work that you're doing offline in this very physical kind of process, and very present kind of tangible artistry into a screen, and that is not an easy task.
No, and I kind of wonder if people are going to reach a screen saturation point and just not look at things for a while.
Yeah, it's almost as though there's so much resource online that there needs to be an alleviation of that. Well, just sort of in closing here, tell me one or two things that you're really looking forward to accomplishing once some of the restrictions and limitations are phased off and we're able to start to gather again.
In the short term, if we do open up in this phased way, the four of us that I mentioned, Lee, Joel, Dania, and me, are actually looking forward to being in the shop and having time to work in the print shop, because we're all artists and we often have other responsibilities running Signal Return that don't allow us to make work. So in the short term, and maybe it's a little bit, I don't know, selfish, but we're going to make work that we'll be able to sell in the shop. So it will give us a kind of uninterrupted time to get some work done. One thing that happens when our doors are open is that people walk in and they're always kind of knocked out by the visuals of a print shop. And so we end up talking a lot, explaining what we do, telling the story, which is great. But this little bit of time that we might have to make work is something that we're looking forward to. And then, of course, we're looking forward to ramping up what we enjoy doing the most, which is having people in the shop so that they can learn, we can teach. There's this kind of exchange that happens on so many different levels to be part of the Detroit community.
Are there some creative things that you're doing personally now to sort of cope, or maybe cope is the wrong word, but move through this pandemic?
I'm lucky to have a studio of my own so that I can work on some things when I'm not at Signal Return. It's been a little hard to focus, I have to say. But I have a few projects that I'm working on that are moving along slowly, but at least they're moving a little bit. That's the creative thing. The other creative thing I'm trying to do is looking for funding to keep the place going so that we'll be there when this is over and we can open our doors again.
Well, Lynne, I wish you all the best and appreciate the work that you're doing down there in Detroit. And hopefully people will be able to get back to the presses real soon.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for your interest.
Thank you for listening to the Saginaw Art Museum podcast. You can stay connected with the museum through our website and social media channels. We invite you to become a subscriber of this podcast or become a monthly contributor to the show to help us carry out our mission of providing art for all.